Ladies and gentlemen, let me be very clear. Once again, Republicans are doing what they do best. Racist Republicans mess up the country and they find the nearest black person to blame. Case in point, let me take you to Texas. In Texas, the Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, who by the way, he was one of the first people who went on record and said, some people are just going to need to die as it relates to COVID-19. That guy, the failed leadership guy, has blamed the black community for COVID-19. Here's that video.
As a response coming after your state because the increased COVID numbers, hospitalizations, deaths are up in Texas, and there's a direct assault on your governor's policies and your state's policies. Very brief response.
Yeah, well, Laura, the COVID is spreading, particularly most of the numbers are with the unvaccinated, and the Democrats like to blame Republicans on that. Well, the biggest group in most states are African Americans who have not been vaccinated. The last time I checked, over 90% of them vote for Democrats in their major cities and major counties. So it's up to the Democrats to get, just as it's up to Republicans, to try to get as many people vaccinated. But we respect the fact that if people don't want the vaccination, we're not going to force it on them. That's their individual right. But in terms of criticizing the Republicans for this, we're encouraging people who want to take it, but they're doing nothing for the African American community.
The Lieutenant Governor is a damn lie. So let's highlight all of the lies that he told. Number one, the question was actually a fair one, surprisingly enough. It was about policy. What is happening with your policy in Texas and the relationship of your policy and the increased number of COVID-19 deaths and hospitalizations? That's a fair context for that question. And instead of answering that question, this Lieutenant Governor decided to blame black people for the rise of COVID-19. Let's go through some facts. The US Census Bureau data collected in July and August suggests unvaccinated white Texans outnumber unvaccinated black Texans roughly 3-to-1. That's a staggering number. It gets deeper. The latest data from the Texas Department of State Health Services shows that the African American population, there is not driving the increase in cases. Black residents in Texas accounted for, now get this, 16.4% of the state's cases and 10.2% of the deaths as of August 13th. Black people make up about 13% of the state's population, according to the census. While vaccination rates are low among black Texans, the highest coronavirus case rates are among whites and Hispanics. These are facts. Non-Hispanic white people who make up 41% of the state's population, make up 34.9% of COVID cases. Texas, as a state, ladies and gentlemen, they are also behind the national average of fully vaccinated people. About 46% of Texans are fully vaccinated. The nationwide rate is about 51%. And listen, there is some context here, okay? There's some nuance that we need to explore. Only 28% of African Americans in the state are vaccinated totally. It's worth mentioning that due to a lack of trust in healthcare and some other variables, there's this real distrust about the vaccine that we continue to fight against. The estimated national maternal mortality rate in the United States is about 17 per 100,000, but is about 43 per 100,000 live births for black women. That's just one data set. COVID cases in Texas have risen by 17 percentage points in the last week, and deaths are up nearly 60%, while Governor Abbott continues to seek a ban on mask mandates. An interesting caveat, the good governor has COVID himself, okay? Let's open this up, obviously, to the whole panel. My dear sister, Nina, what do you think?
Doc, I'm just shaking my head. I mean, I can't, I'm saying this, both the governor and the lieutenant governor are fools. And this is not the time to make a scapegoat, to have a dog whistle. This is really a time for Americans and quite frankly, the entire world to come together so that we can tame COVID. We have to get to herd immunity. We haven't even gotten there. Now the Delta variant is out, and I'm also hearing from doctors there's another variant that's even more contagious than the variant that we have right now. But we all know what the lieutenant governor was signaling. And what does, it doesn't have anything to do with whether or not black people vote for Democrats or not when it comes to the COVID-19 virus. I just call it a dog whistle. They are uninformed and they really just don't care. I wanna say something else, but I know we're gonna keep it PG. They just don't care.
Yeah, so I wanna give more context too. So Rashad mentioned that the governor has COVID, and that's why you're seeing the lieutenant governor. So that's why he's in a mad scramble to justify their incompetence. And they have, right now, the two governors that brag the most about not doing a damn thing about COVID, Abbott and DeSantis in Florida, have the two worst rates in the country. They're #1 and #2 in worst cases, worst deaths. They both are against mask mandates in schools for the kids, to protect the kids. Now a growing percentage of the hospitalized, this is also new, are now kids, partly because they're the ones that are not vaccinated, along with the folks who are choosing not to get vaccinated. So look, the numbers are what Rashad laid out for you, but I'm gonna give a tiny bit more context to those two. So when you see that there's 3 times as many unvaccinated white people as there are black people in Texas, if you look at the populations, it's also about 3 to 1. So to be fair, there are a number of unvaccinated African Americans, but not more than white folks in Texas as a percentage, really, let alone in the case. In fact, when you look at the deaths, black Americans in Texas are underrepresented in deaths, thank God, okay? And look, I'm not sure exactly why, because they're a little overrepresented in the cases, but it's possible that they're taking more precautions other than the vaccine, right? That is leading to less deaths. But I'm not positive about that, but we do know the numbers. We know the facts. So when you see those facts and you see that that the majority of the cases that's driving the problem in Texas is, yes, from whites, and also, by the way, from Hispanics, right? And that's both true because there's a lot of whites and Hispanics in Texas. But yet when the lieutenant governor comes on television and blames black people, you know that there's something other than facts that are driving what he's saying on television. And that, of course, is a political agenda. And so when you look at that, so what is the political agenda? Well, both in Texas and curiously in Florida, they first blamed Mexican immigrants. Oh, it's not that we're telling people to not get vaccinated and not put on masks. It's in their terminology, the illegals that are causing this spike in COVID. Well, first of all, I thought you said COVID was no big deal. So now all of a sudden you're blaming Mexican immigrants, and in Florida, I don't know if you guys know, but they don't share a border. But apparently that wasn't enough because the cases are so overflowing in both states. They're like, oh, let's go back to the well. If you're gonna do racism in America, what are you gonna do? You're gonna do it against black people. So now they're at that. By the way, I'll predict ahead of time. I'll tell you the next set of folks they're gonna blame, because it's what they do every single time, and it's throughout American history. Then they'll blame gay people. Why? I don't know. It doesn't matter, because they go through their litany of hate, right? So we hate undocumented immigrants, we hate black people, and who are you gonna blame next? Numbers and facts are totally irrelevant.
Yeah, it's quite interesting to note that what you saw the lieutenant governor doing is trying to attack those on the left by using the conduit of black people to get there. Because his ultimate conclusion in his misguided and untrue rhetoric was that somehow Democrats need to take control of this situation as it relates to black people. Now, Sister Nina is correct. You mean to tell me that you have contextualized this entire issue of a damn pandemic to a political notion of Democrats taking care of black people? So first of all, your premise is incorrect about your numbers. And secondly, your conclusion is completely adversarial to what we understand as democracy in the United States of America. Now, we already know these guys think like this, but this individual has gone on record publicly and said de facto, I don't give a damn about black people.
And Doc, I want to add to that. I mean, in full display, and just listening to you and Cenk, I was thinking of the saying, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. And that's really what is going on here. You know, the venom to make everything about who's a Democrat and who's a Republican, instead of leaders coming together to talk to people about the facts, about the need for everybody to take responsibility and do their part so that we can tame this virus both in this nation and in this world. But you know, that's asking a little too much.
Yeah, I want to say one last thing here. Look, some folks in the rural areas, it's not that they're choosing not to get the vaccine, it's that they're having trouble getting the vaccine and they need transportation. It's not as easy as living in a big city, just walking into a CVS. Access is a huge issue. Nina's absolutely right about that. And so that applies to poor folks, both black and white and Hispanic. And so that you have a lot more of that in Texas, where a lot of the health centers are not as easily accessible. And of course, for black Americans, there's the Tuskegee syphilis experiments, and there's a history of the government injecting black folks in this country with terrible things. So there's a little bit more understandable hesitation there. That history does not exist with white Republicans in this country. They're, on the other hand, are resisting because of their politicians. Their politicians fed them demagoguery and are endangering their lives. And just final fact on it, you know, Rashad mentioned there 41% of Texas is white, and the death rate from COVID is 41.1%. And so yes, they are dying at a proportional rate here. It has nothing to do with minorities. It has everything to do with hesitation, sometimes justified because of history in the case of African Americans, justified concern. You should take it because that's not what this is, right? And in other times, totally unjustified demagoguery that's driving to deaths. And if you're not vaccinated, remember guys, almost everyone who's dying is not vaccinated. You're taking a huge risk with your life.